Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg, and tonight I want to take a quick look at a new item that I just got in yesterday. I've been planning a video. It's a little bit off topic. It's a little bit out of character for the channel. Not terribly far, but it's a little bit off topic. Hopefully some of you will find it interesting when that video comes out. But it required that I buy a couple of new timepieces, which I know is a real huge tragedy. Do I buy the things to make videos, or do I make the videos for an excuse to buy the things? That's the great question. I think I know the answer to it. You probably do too. But anyway, the other item, there's going to be two items in that upcoming video. The other one's currently tied up in the Ukrainian postal system. It'll be here eventually, but this one came yesterday. And this is not going to be a true unboxing because obviously it's not in its packing box. I didn't have time to make the video last night, but I also didn't have the patience to wait until today to cut it out of its package. I did have a quick look at it yesterday over a cup of tea, but I want to take a better look at it right now and let the rest of you join in with me as I do that. So without any further ado, let's move over to the tabletop and check out this sort of watch. All right, so here is our mystery item, and I already can't remember if I mentioned in the intro that it was Russian, specifically Soviet-era Russian, but those of you who are familiar already with Soviet-era consumer goods will immediately recognize this as a Soviet-era Russian plastic box that lots and lots of products came in, high-end and low-end, very, very typical, very rectangular, unbranded, sort of not very nicely injection molded, but very sturdy, very, very sturdy, very heavy and sturdy, and it's lovely. So anyway, you didn't come here to see a box. Let's open it up and see what's inside. This is not, I don't believe, Russian foam, so we'll take that out of the way. And there is the item that you have come here to see. And this is a, as I already mentioned, Russian stopwatch. And it works pretty much like most other two-button stopwatches that you'd be familiar with in the West. But as you can see, it was, in fact, made in Russia. It's actually made in the Soviet Union. Сделано в СССР. This is made in the USSR, and that is the Soviet seal of quality, that little triangular or pentagonal shape there with what appears to be a stylized anvil or something in the middle. That was the Soviet mark of quality. And you can read the brand name here, and if you're an English speaker and you're used to the Latin alphabet, you would be forgiven for thinking that that said Azam. But in fact it says Agat. That is in fact an A, but the second letter is a Cyrillic script G followed by an A, and this thing that looks like an M on the end is actually a T, so that's Agat. And this was probably the most common stopwatch manufacturer in Soviet-era Russia. They made these things in the millions, and they were used for all kinds of stuff, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'll be talking about that in an upcoming video. The interesting thing is I only became aware of this particular stopwatch when I was watching the movie K-19, The Widowmaker, which was produced, it's an American-made movie, produced by National Geographic, and it's a true account, or a based on true events account of a Soviet-Russian submarine, nuclear submarine tragedy that happened. But at any rate, in that movie, Harrison Ford plays the Captain Bligh style iron-fisted commander of this Soviet nuclear submarine, and he is viciously and repetitively running speed drills on his crew and timing them and maniacally punching the buttons on a stopwatch in this training montage to show what a hard-nosed, evil person he is. And I wanted to know what the watch was that he had in his hand, and it turns out it was this watch, or a very similar one. I think the one in the movie had a black star here instead of the Soviet mark of quality. But at any rate, I wanted a brand new condition watch, and this is about as close as you can get when it comes to a 30-year-old watch, or 30-plus years old watch. This watch was made in 1989. It still has its original tag with the watch's serial number written on it and a little manufacturer's mark on the back. It has been in storage for a long time, so there's been some spots where the chrome plating has flaked off and reveals the copper plating that's underneath it. But overall, it's in really excellent condition. As I think I mentioned already, this watch is made in a city called Zlatoust in the Ural Mountains in just west of southwestern Siberia. And Zlatoust is actually a town that I am very familiar with. I've been there numerous times, but I was not aware of this watch until I saw it in that movie. I was vaguely aware that there was a watch factory in that town at one point in time, but lo and behold, it's actually still in business. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. This watch features the Agat model 4295B movement inside of it, which is a 16-jewel, fairly standard. It does feature a column wheel to initiate the chronograph, and it basically just has start and stop and restart features. There's no flyback, there's no rattrapant or anything like that in this watch. So you can time multiple intervals using the seconds hand, and then you can reset everything to 0 by pushing this button here. So it's essentially brand new with a little bit of aging. There was a little bit of corrosion at the base of this button here. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Well, not really corrosion, just flaking of the chrome plating. This watch was manufactured in 1989, and although it's in brand new condition and it works perfectly well, 1989 was not, the late 1980s, and we're talking about, what, a year to 2 years before the fall of the Soviet Union. That was not a high point in Soviet manufacturing. But another reason I wanted to get a watch in brand new condition was I wanted to have its passport. Every Soviet manufactured commercial product had a passport. You can see it written right there, passport. Again, the Soviet mark of quality, the made in Russia mark, and the date of manufacture, printed numerous times. 3 times on one side of the passport we have the 20th of October 1989 printed on there. And once more on the back with the watch's serial number 4768, some sort of an inspection or approval stamp most likely, and instructions all written in Cyrillic Russian. So that's a cool little document, a piece of the past. Without this, the watch is not particularly valuable to me. I really wanted to have the paperwork to back everything up. So that's kind of cool. Again, I'm going to be going into this watch and another watch in more depth in the future, but I just thought you'd want to kind of check this one out. This is the first time I'm looking at it very closely. Oh yeah, there's a little bit more chrome flaking there. That was very typical of Soviet manufacturing. Towards the end, they started making plating thinner and thinner and thinner, especially with precious metals like rhodium and gold, but apparently even with chrome, because this is barely plated with chrome, and a lot of it, without even having been worn or corroded, has flaked off. So, but it seems to work just fine. I'll be testing it out a little bit, and again, it'll be featured in an upcoming video. So let's wrap this up and move back over to the bookshelves so that you're not watching this forever. So as I stated in the intro, I'm going to be discussing that watch in more depth in an upcoming video, as well as another watch which is coming in. It's another Russian manufacturer, Slava, also Soviet period. I'm going to be talking about the history of both of those watches and the history of stopwatches in general in the Soviet Union, not just as it relates to the obvious timing of sporting events, but also the roles played by stopwatches in military operations, the space program, science. The Soviets built some really good stopwatches, and they were really used for an amazing array of different things. The interesting thing about this watch is it is from the city of Zlatoust, and I am very familiar with Zlatoust. I've been there, I don't know how many times I've been there. I've been there numerous times. It's the city which is directly adjacent to the city that my wife is from. My wife has extended family living there. I've been there on numerous occasions. And Zlatoust is a big center of metal manufacturing, particularly decorative arts. They do a lot of metal engraving, and it's also a major cutlery manufacturer in Russia. I've been to several knife factories in Zlatoust, and I've even brought home a few Russian knives that were made there that are very artfully engraved. So I'm familiar with Zlatoust. I was not familiar with the Zlatoust watch factory. Well, more importantly, or I guess more accurately, I should say, I wasn't aware that the Zlatoust watch factory, the Agat watch factory, was still in operation. It is today, and it's doing just fine. They make those big canteen-style Russian divers watches. So the next time I'm in Zlatoust, which will probably be not this coming summer, but the following summer, I'm going to take my camera with, and I am going to make an honest effort to get inside that factory and try to talk someone into letting me take some video inside the factory, and maybe even interview somebody if they're willing to talk to me. I have found that Russian factory managers can be a little bit skitsy about people taking photos and video, although a lot of times when you ask nicely, they will accommodate you. I did get yelled at one time. My cousin and I got yelled at by a supermarket manager for taking photographs inside a Russian supermarket. It was a renovated old factory, and it had this great overhead tracks for a gantry-style crane, and the gantry was still there, and the crane was still there over aisles of groceries, and I thought this was really amazing, and I was taking some photos, and security almost threw us out on the street, so we'll see how it goes, but if it happens, I will definitely be posting it here. I hope that some of you found this video enjoyable, maybe enlightening. If you did, please consider subscribing. It goes a long way to keeping me here on the air. If you're already a subscriber, do all those other wonderful things. Like, share, tell your friends, and when I post new content to the channel, I hope to see each of you here then. Later, guys.